Most full stack tutorials build just toy apps, but this series does not. Welcome everyone to Voice of Code and yet another episode of building full stack system from scratch. In the last video, I showed you why CodeY 2.0 failed and the lessons I learned from it. Today, we start fixing that. So in this episode, I am going to define the exact system we are going to build, the architecture, the tech stack, and the end goal of this entire series. This is going to be a production grade, real world full stack system. Front end, back end, infrastructure, CI/CD, everything we need in terms of real engineering. So if you want to build something real and you are just tired of dummy applications, please follow along. If you get stuck somewhere, please leave a comment and I will help. So without any further ado, let's get started and understand what exactly we are going to build and how the system is going to be structured. So let's start by understanding what kind of system are we developing. So what are we building? So we are building a production style full stack system, and our goal is to develop a system that should be robust, that should be scalable, and that should be built from the scratch. We'll be developing the core logic APIs, microservices, and the data services that will power up our system. We will be developing micro frontends for the user to work on the system and to manipulate the data. This is the core of any system. So we'll be having authentication and authorization so that we can have secure user access and secure access to the system itself and permission as well. We'll be having one admin panel. So this is a dedicated micro frontend application that we will be using for managing our users, any sort of content and any sort of system configurations. And the super admin or admin can use this admin panel. We'll be developing tenant and user-based modules. So tenant-based modules means super admin will be managing the admin and the admin will further managing the users. And then we will be having one user module where super admin will directly managing the user itself. And we will deploy all the complete system to a real server that will be built from scratch. So will be setting up a server from scratch and we will take the system live to that particular server. So let's see the high level architecture of this system, what we are going to build. So it will be having front-end applications, user interfaces and clients, admin panel so that we can manage the system and monitor the system. We'll be having backend microservices where our business logic and APIs will reside, our data will reside. Then we will be having identity service as authentication and authorization is important for any system. And then we have database to store our persistent data. So this is the high level architecture of this complete system we are going to build. Let's talk about the backend overview. So the backend will be a purely microservice based backend and it will be totally a .NET 8 project. So we'll be having .NET 8 solutions for different microservices. As we all know, we will be using PostgreSQL for databases and we'll be using JWT authentication for secure access and we'll be dockerizing all the microservices and all the micro frontend so that we don't have to worry about shipping irrespective of the machine architecture and the underlying OS. Let's talk about the front end overview. So in the front end, we will be using NX for managing all the micro front ends and all the libraries within a single repository. And also NX provides the building tool as well. Then for each and every micro front end, we will be using Next.js as it provides server-side rendering as well and better SEO. We'll be having shared libraries. So we'll be using we already have reusable templates for libraries so that each and every micro front end maintain consistency. And this way we can accelerate the development as slow development was the main pitfall of CodeY 2.0. Then we'll be using NextAuth to design and implement authentication and authorization on the client side. Since Next.js is a server-side framework, so we can also have authentication there as well. We'll be having our admin dashboard as we have talked about. So we'll be developing a dedicated micro frontend for administrative tasks like managing users and any sort of data management and monitoring. Let's talk about the detailed system architectures. So how we are going to have this. So let me show you the complete picture of this architecture step by step. So this is our detailed system architecture, and I will explain each and every component here, what they will do and why they exist in the system. So first of all, let's talk about the clients. So right now we only have web browser, but later on we can also expand to mobile application. So any mobile application can call the system APIs, the microservices APIs, and the system will be able to deliver all the data and all the operations there. Then any sort of request coming from the client will go to the domain server. So we'll be having a DNS server. Then we have the reverse proxy server, the web server, which we'll be using caddy. It will also provide the SSL termination. Then the request can either go to any of the micro frontend if it's coming for admin panel, if it's coming for some tenant specific application module, or some user specific module, or our public facing module. Based on that, the request can go to any microservices, whatever the micro frontend will call. So we can have different microservices like user identity. We have tenant management service, notification service. So we'll be having specific microservice for each sort of operation. That each and every microservice will be talking to its own data layer, and that will be PostgreSQL. So we'll be having a single instance of Postgre, but each and every microservice will have its isolated database in the Postgres instance. And for caching, we will be implementing Redis, but that will be just a part of future. And in future, we also can implement some messaging queues. Again, scale the application server or scale these microservices. And we can again have metrics and tracing of each and every microservice. And we can also use CDN here. So for serving the static assets quickly to the application without have to worry about going through all the phases. Let's talk about the build and the CI/CD system. So developer, the all the repos code will be residing here in Azure repos. Any sort of trigger will trigger the Azure pipelines. The Azure pipelines will be using all Azure agent pool. So these will be the self-hosted agent in our own servers, and they'll be utilizing the secrets from Azure variables itself. The self-hosted agent will build the application, will push the image to our private Docker registry. So we are not using the uh, standard Docker registry. We'll be having our own private Docker registry that is in our own private infra server. So if I talk about server, we'll be having two servers. One is the private server and another one will be the public server. This server can only be accessed within a private network. So only this application server can access this private server. So the build agent will push our Docker images here in this private Docker registry. And this server will also have a Postgre instance. So our database and Docker registry will be here in our private servers. Now the public server will only be used for front-end Docker containers and backend containers and a web server that is caddy for now. So it will be just accessible by the public. So any hit will come here to the caddy, and caddy can further reverse proxy the request to a particular micro frontend, and then micro frontend can call the particular micro backend. This application server will be pulling images from the private Docker registry and will start the Docker image here in this server itself. So this is our detailed architecture for this complete system. We will be using this architecture. So now let's talk about how we will build this. So we will be using public templates. So as I have mentioned in the first two episodes that I have posted the public templates in NuGet, and also there is a NX template, NX complete workspace template in NPM. So we'll be using those templates, and we'll be accelerating our initial setup. We'll be not spending much time in the initial setup itself. And those setup itself contain best practices from across the sources I have. So we'll be using those. For each and every feature we'll be developing, we'll be having step-by-step episodes in dedicated episodes itself. Each feature will be added incrementally. So if we are building some sort of complex features, we'll be first breaking down that particular feature into pieces, then putting that into Azure board, and we'll picking up each and every task of it, not the complete feature itself, so that we can understand it better, we can implement it better. And everything we will build will be live. We'll be having real-time uh, challenges, solutions, whatever I will face. I will also let you guys know about that and how I overcome that particular challenge and what specific solution I propose for that and why. So uh, to start this journey, it has some prerequisites which we should have in order to work alongside. So first of all, these are the required software. Git we need for version controlling and tracking our code changes, and collaboration if anyone wants to. Docker is there for containerization and also running our Postgre instances. We require Node.js and NX, as Next.js is a JavaScript framework, so we need the runtime Node.js for that. We'll be using .NET 8 for our microservices and any sort of code editor. So I prefer Cursor, and for backend, I'll be using JetBrains Writer by IntelliJ. You can choose any sort of code editor. So some basic knowledge is also required. We also need to understand how APIs work and how different software components communicate with each other. Then for backend, C# and OOPS is mandatory. We should have knowledge about these. And for frontend, we'll be using TypeScript. So we need knowledge of JavaScript and TypeScript. Basic fundamentals and database management knowledge of SQL and Postgre is enough. Uh, a bit knowledge of HTTP concepts, some special status codes, and how this protocol works, and a bit of Azure DevOps knowledge as well. So like Azure boards, how we use them, and a bit of CI/CD as an overview concept. So by the end of this series, we'll be running a full stack system that can be deployed anywhere without having to worry about the architecture, the infra, the operating system, whatever. We'll be having a public reusable backend template that is hosted in NuGet. So we can reuse that for our future microservice project that is that has been built with best practices, and all the utility code is there. We'll also be having a front-end workspace template using NX for micro-frontends and using Next.js for our each and every micro-frontend. We'll be having a specific admin panel which can be used to manage and alter the content inside the system. And content can be of various things like configurations, users, the system data itself. We'll be having one tenant module that is B2B. So super admin will be managing the admins, and the admins will be managing each and specific user of the application. And we'll be having one user module, so we can develop any sort of user module like budget management, task management, anything. And we will also have one public facing application which any visitor in the internet can go and just check out without having to worry about the authentication and authorization. So this public facing app will not be protected by any sort of authentication mechanism. So guys, let me give you a brief structure of this complete series. It's an overview and I have break down it into phases. So first we'll go with the foundation phase where we'll be talking about concepts, we'll be talking about prerequisites and tools we need and how we can initially set up the project. Then backend development. So we'll be focusing on API creation, setting up the database and integrating it with our microservices, authentication, and front-end development. So both of them, backend and front-end, they can go parallel. So we can have like designing the UI at the same time and then integrating the APIs. The fourth phase will be DevOps and deployment. So first we will be configuring our CI pipelines, and then we will be configuring the CD pipelines and hosting it on a custom live server. And we will be also talking more on scaling our application, scaling our server itself. And then final demo and review. So we'll be giving the final demo, and we'll also review what challenges we have faced, what key learnings are there, and what we can do next with the system itself. All right, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. In the next episode, we will start up setting the backend template, which we have published as in the NuGet gallery, and we'll see how we can scaffold our first microservice. If you're following this series, please make sure you have the prerequisites ready. And if you do have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'll see you in the next one.